Hi, everybody. Welcome back to season 3 of Changemakers in Autism. I'm Chantel Walker, and I'm joined again this year with my co-host Jennifer Faust, and we get to talk to people around the country who are working with the autism community to redefine what's possible.
Today, we're joined by David Aspinall, CEO of Auticon US. Welcome, David. Thanks for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me, Jennifer. I really appreciate it.
Fantastic. So let's just dive right in. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. My career started in big companies. The company I worked the longest for, actually AT&T. I joined AT&T as a salesperson and left AT&T having served as the president of AT&T in Canada. After that, went to go work at Sprint for a couple of years, leading Sprint Business, which was an entree into private equity and a wonderful organization called YPO. And that's how I met the team, the global CEO and the board at Auticon.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about Auticon US?
Sure. So we're a wonderful organization. First and foremost, this might sound a little curious, but I do want to lead with this. It's really important for the story of Auticon. We're a for-profit. We're not a charitable organization. Of course, we support charitable endeavors. We support philanthropic efforts. We support legislative efforts in the community. But first and foremost, we're business operators, and we approach the challenge within the autistic community from a business operator perspective. And so we're focused on a very singular fact. And that fact is that 85% of the autistic community is in some way underemployed. And underemployed is a curious word. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's what we're focused on. We're focused on ensuring that underemployment is no longer a factor in the US and that people can find genuine work that is related to the skills that they have at market salaries with market benefits for some of the most amazing companies in the country. So that's what Auticon is. We're a force for good in fighting underemployment in the autistic community.
David, I actually love that you led with that about being a for-profit, because obviously, we're a nonprofit, but when we are thinking about supporting the clients that we serve in a job setting, oftentimes we find ourselves having to explain hiring somebody with autism. We're not asking for charity here. That's not what this is. This is an employee with valuable skills, right? Looking to contribute to the workforce, and it's not charity. And I think that it's really important that businesses like yours make it clear that it doesn't need to be, and that this is a business proposition. So really love that.
Yeah, everybody brings a different skill, a different way of thinking to an individual role, and a team needs to be comprised of people that think differently in order to be high performing. And think about the space that Auticon is in. I think it's important to state that because I'm not talking about stereotypes here. I'm talking about individuals that want to work in software engineering, want to work in data sciences, want to work in quality assurance and testing. These are technical roles. And so the individuals that are attracted to come work for us, they bring something to those roles, which is highly valuable. The ability to spot patterns in large amounts of data, the fact that sometimes repetitive tasks don't deplete energy, just looking at things in a different perspective, different learning styles, different cognitive profiles. What we actually find is we're not asking our clients to be altruistic. We're not asking our clients to engage with us because they're nice people. Now, yes, they're nice people, but we're not asking them to be with us because of that. We're asking them to work with us because our people represent a performance advantage, and we're really very clear about that. Sometimes people might start working with us because they're personally motivated by the mission. But clearly companies stay with us and grow with us and build with us because we're darn good at what we do. And so it's a really, really important fact that the connectivity between business performance and affecting an outcome in the mission is intrinsically linked here.
So I'm fascinated to learn about how talent acquisition works. Can you speak a little to that?
Yes, yes. It's one of the key components of the business. Oftentimes, let's talk about that word underemployment, because typically that's how we're finding people. This isn't anecdote. A lot of the time when we work with people, they would have been underemployed, working in fast food. We see that a lot. You could have the technical skills where you can be a 4-star SQL technologist or a Java developer or a Vue.js developer, just to name some technical titles that we have within the organization. And you're working in fast food because you haven't been able to navigate the 1.0 interview process. Some of the demands of the traditional interview process, our people don't do well in. And so what we have done is completely change it on its head. We use a level of gamification to understand the cognitive profile of that individual. We want to understand the strengths that individual has, and therefore be able to make connections between those cognitive strengths and the types of role that individual will flourish in. We also have a series of chats. We do not use the word interview. The word interview, we have found with our community, sometimes can be stressful, and sometimes can cause anxiety, just being in the interview process. And so we have an autism-friendly recruitment process. I already mentioned the gamification, but then we go into a series of chats. These chats are really important because the technical chat will build upon the testing and gamification to understand exactly where we think that candidate would do well, in which roles and with which clients. And then the next chat is with our job coaches. And our job coaches are really, really important for what we do. Our job coaching program works with that individual and then also with that client organization. And so the job coaching chat for the job seeker is us understanding how that individual shows up at work and how we can support that individual. Oftentimes, it's things like workplace efficiencies, workplace effectiveness, communication style are all elements that go into job coaching, and understanding how that individual can be successful in a role with a major corporation in America. So it's a longer process, and we're very, very clear about that. This isn't like a 2-interview thing and you got an offer letter. It is a longer process. It's a very deliberate process. But after that process, the individual candidate goes into our ready to work community, which now we can then go work with our client partners and get to a point where we're placing those individuals in really kind of well-paying roles, market roles. Oftentimes, here again is that word underemployment. Oftentimes, the individual that joins our team, it might be the first time that they've had healthcare. And, we're actually just right now, like every organization, going through our, benefits renewal calendar for our healthcare programs for next year. So it's the first time that they could have healthcare. We've got a 401k program. It's the first time that they maybe have retirement savings as well. And so these things are super important, as to tackle that underemployment, which is informs everything that we do.
So just want to dig in a little bit more about the sort of interview process and how you said you turned it on your head. So you did a great job explaining kind of what that looks like. But I would guess that going from the process that you have in place now to maybe where you started, right? The traditional interviewing, that took a lot of mental energy around the table, a lot of expertise and a commitment, because it's an investment of everybody's time, right, to change the interview process. So can you talk a little bit about who you brought around the table to re-envision the interview process and maybe the steps along the way between what it started and where you are right now?
That's a really interesting question, because we wouldn't be successful if we didn't have different stakeholders around the table when it came to the calories that we spent in that process. One of the key elements to it is that we can't be a leadership team of neurotypical individuals that looks at the neurodistinct individual as a revenue bearing person that fuels the business. In order for us to live our own culture, in order for us to be genuine and to have credibility in front of our clients, the leadership team and the architects of that process in particular have to come from the community. So it has to contain autistic individuals or people with autism, depending upon the preference of communication, and neurodistinct individuals that are bringing their perspective into that role. We have a wonderful individual that runs our recruitment process. She has been with the organization now 5 years and is an active member of the community herself. When I say that, she is autistic, and she is also a member of the advocacy networks within the autism and autistic community. And so she had a massive voice in designing this because obviously of her lived experience and everything that is experienced by these candidates. So yeah, it's really important to us. The job coaches were also intimately involved in the design of this process. They are experts at neurodiversity in the workplace, and so that's when somebody calls themselves a SME, that's the subject that they're the SME in, right? Specifically in autism in the workplace, which is different from a therapist or a BCBA. It's a different environment, and so those individuals also had a very important role to play as we designed this process.
Yeah, that was a wonderful question, Chantel, and a wonderful answer, I would add. So do the job coaches do more than help with self-advocacy at the workplace? Do they offer any training? Do they help them hone skills that are needed to succeed?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. What we've realized is the very work that we do has a singular outcome. It takes an individual that is underemployed and places that individual with one of our client organizations. And we've got some wonderful client organizations that are, more than happy for me to mention who they are, because they're such active participants within our partnership. Like wonderful organizations like Nationwide Insurance, Fidelity Investments, Salesforce, Health Catalyst, Cover My Meds, McKesson, to name a few. Disney, ESPN, let's not forget those guys. So, the the singular outcome to take a qualified technologist with the right cognitive profile and place them in the appropriate job is just one of the outcomes. The other outcomes are really driven by that job coach and their rollout of a neurodiversity in the workplace program, which involves training. For every person that we place, we do a series of trainings for the individuals that are going to work with our consultant, our technologist in the workplace. And then also, we have wider training available to the broader team on different elements of what it means to be a destination employer for the neurodiverse. And that all grew out. That doesn't come from an academic standpoint. There's nothing wrong with that academic standpoint. I don't mean for that to sound negative. It actually comes from an experiential standpoint, a lived experience standpoint. So what we're able to do with our clients is assess them as a destination employer for the neurodiverse, and work with them on different pathways to make them more attractive in different dimensions. And that all stemmed from the job coaching program and our experience in these kind of, repeated many times placements of individuals to those client organizations.
So I would imagine there's some nuances and sensitivities in pairing the candidate with the appropriate job coach, as strengths and skills differ from person to person.
Absolutely. And that also extends to the different clients as well. There are, every client environment is different. Every corporate culture is different. And those nuances are what the recruitment process is the start point for understanding those nuances of that individual. And so the matching of the individual to the eventual client organization is more than just hey, does this individual have these 5 skills? It's how that individual shows up at work, and then the corporate culture of the client to be able to take that individual and have a partnership, which means that it excels.
And David, when you and I talked about your definition of job coaching in our last conversation, it was really certainly an on-ramp, right, to a placement, but it's a give and take throughout the entire tenure of your staff member working in that environment, right? So can you talk a little bit about that cadence?
Yeah, I've often wondered if there's a better way to say this, but honestly, the best way that I can think of describing it is that it's seasonal. It's not seasonal and scheduled, but what we tend to see is individuals that will go through a period of time, and job coaching might just be a check-in. It might be that simple. It might just be a check-in. How are things going? What are your blockers? What are you working on? What is some professional development items that we can touch upon? And it can be a very, almost like a rhythm-based check-in. However, then there are also times where an individual might be going through a period of burnout, or an individual might be having a different experience. Maybe it's a communication issue. Maybe there's a level of frustration at a particular part of a project or engagement, and then job coaching can become more intense. What we try not to do, we try to have a very clear demarcation between job coaching and therapy, or between job coaching and the more kind of clinical approaches, because it's there for a very specific reason. It's there specifically for autism in the workplace. And oftentimes we will work with an individual's support team as well, but we will remain focused on kind of the workplace element to this. Um, we've had some wonderful stories of people that have grown through job coaching, individuals that have grown through the program that have, had the confidence to go get married, buy a house, even transition to becoming employees of our clients. That's something that we wholeheartedly support. In fact, a lot of the clients that we work with actually want that. They want to see us as a talent source rather than a vendor. And we're more than happy to participate in that, because what we find is we can work with an individual and they can be an employee of Auticon for a year or two or three. We actually just had an individual that moved over to one of our client organizations that was with us for 2.5 years. And that individual was ready for the next step in their career. Well, we now wholeheartedly endorse the fact that the next step in their career is a different team within a client organization, which we've been able to mold in our kind of engagement to help them to become a better employer for our community. So it actually is very well connected to our mission to get to a point where the hiring capacity of the likes of Disney and Fidelity and Nationwide and those others that we work with throughout the country can help address the underemployment. It's a benefit of working with us, and then also it's an outcome from our inclusion services where we'll help teach that organization how to do it for themselves.
You make it sound like I know we know it's not easy because we're in the we share this community with you, right? And you guys have really done. I mean, it's extraordinary the work that you have and that you've. I think the philosophy that you've brought to developing. But we know, right, that it's not easy. And I think if it were, there would be a lot more Auticons thriving in the world than there are. So, what do you think the barriers are, and why do you think that you guys have the secret sauce kind of thing that's making it work
Yeah,
for you?
fear is the biggest barrier. Um, Fear of the unknown. Also, what we observe a lot is that an organization wants to do the right thing, but is maybe a little bit afraid.
David, we
And
think, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we think one of the major fears is that a neurodistinct individual cannot have the employment terminated. It's just not the case. They're an employee like anyone else. Did you
absolutely,
find that as well?
yeah, yeah. I think I think that comes into it. It's where do accommodations end, and the fact that we're at will employees begin. Fear as well in terms of and the incredibly well-meaning people that want to do the right thing but are not personally connected to autism, and therefore is afraid of the language. We see a lot of people that are afraid of the language. I think already, since we've been talking, I've said a couple of times autistic person with autism, right? And we ask someone their preference in that regard. Um, and so fear of offending someone we see leads sometimes to inaction, because and there's nothing worse than inaction. Um, offending someone and learning through doing that, I think is 100 times better than inaction, because inaction doesn't do anything. In fact, it takes us backwards. And so fear leading to inaction is the thing that we see the most. But what I think is now happening, as younger people have always come in, every generation says this. So there was somebody that was nearly 50 years old 20 years ago saying what I'm about to say. And that is that, younger people, this notion of younger people coming into the workplace. Younger people are coming into the workplace every single day and have been for the last, millennia. So, but individuals that are coming into the workplace today have a different set of expectations, radically different set of expectations. And I think that the expectations that individuals coming into the workplace today have will help our cause, because there's a lot more acceptance of the needs of the individual as an individual. And we see, and you can read the business press and read about people coming into the workplace that are openly saying what their need for accommodation is. Like, I am this, and this is my accommodation need if you want the best out of me in the workplace. And so I believe that the fear that we've seen will help the younger people coming into the workplace will help dissipate some of this, because there'll be a different culture that it's okay to be clear on what you need in order to be successful in the workplace, rather than my generation, which is a little bit like you just get on with it, right? You get on with it, and different ways. So
we muscle through, I think is the term. We'll just muscle through it, right? Exactly.
We'll be good. We'll be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, I'm very optimistic. I think there's an inertia, fear, but I'm very optimistic that a changing workplace culture will actually be advantageous to our community.
So if you look outside of technology and let's just talk about a business in general, any business in any industry, and they want to make positive steps towards becoming a destination for neurodivergent talent, right? What's a small step forward? Is it, I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth. You tell me, what's the small step forward?
Yeah, it's understanding the needs of the people that are in the organization today. People come to us and say, and listen, in the tech world, obviously, the last 8 months has not been the highest growth because of we had, specifically in the winter, a lot of organizations realizing that they'd overhired, and so that we had, you saw it in the newspaper every single day, news of layoffs. However, what's really interesting is even after that, it was a little bit of a correction in my estimation. There are, 2 candidates for every 1 role in the tech space. And so we're in a talent war, and an organization has to be attractive to an individual. And so, it's understanding, rather than saying, even though there's this talent war and there's this need for talent and there's a need for the best qualified talent, even though we got 1 or 2 additional candidates out there today, it's not saying, how do I recruit? When people say to me, how do I recruit? I'm like, all right, we got to stop, because that's the last thing you do. The first thing you do is understand who you are today, what your organization is today. The first step is by ensuring through policies and through good communication that individuals that are in your team today that are on the autism spectrum believe that they are supported enough where they can raise their hand and disclose that without fear of repercussion or any negative impact in the role. And it's understanding the policies around that kind of disclosure. It's having the right talent on the leadership team that will be accepting of that. It's having the vision within the organization to realize, especially going forward, that it takes multiple different ways of working for individuals within a team to make a successful team, where an organization has to start. So the one step I recommend is understanding who you are today before you then go out and say, oh, I want to hire from this community, as a deliberate action. And the other thing is to realize that you're hiring from the community anyway, right? You're hiring from this community whether you realize it or not, and therefore you better start to understand what the needs are of those individuals.
I think that's excellent advice. I guess the next logical question is, Audicon's been able to accomplish a lot. Are there any challenges on the horizon that you see that would be addressed next? Would you be willing to talk about that? Do you have some anticipated growth that you see on the horizon?
Yeah, there are some challenges and there are some opportunities. Actually, it's amazing the parallel between challenges and opportunities, and the way that somebody may have looked at somebody's autistic trait as a weakness without pulling through the associated strength that can exist. And so we see challenges as opportunities because we're in the people business. Um, we need to, as an organization, continue to understand. I think we've got a pretty good grasp on it right now, but we need to continue to understand, as dynamics change, how our clients want to consume talent. How our clients want to work with us. I would be really interested to see if 5 years from now our revenue mix is the same, whereby we have this contingent staffing, temp to perm type motion, or are we doing more in inclusion services and enabling our clients to actually do it from themselves and use their hiring capacity, which is bigger than ours. You know, Disney ESPN has a much greater hiring capacity than we do. So take the combined hiring capacity of our kind of community of clients, and over time, I think it's inevitable that we will continue with the traditional approach of this contingent staffing motion, but also uh, it will become part of a bigger neuro inclusion offering for our clients that work with us. What is remarkable about our core motion is that it informs discovery on what a client needs to do better, because we have the lived experience of the individual and the job coach. But then it's also part of the pathway. Once we've understood how a client can get better, working with our team is also part of a pathway on kind of becoming more of a destination for our community. So challenges wise, it's really just staying close to clients and understanding constantly. And this, I mean, that's business advice for anybody, right? That's not just for us. It's understanding the marketplace and how the marketplace is changing and adapting to that changing marketplace to keep true to the mission.
So, David, we love talking to people like you and your team at Auticon because we're just always really inspired with how much more there is to do alongside the autism community. And we would love to know from your experience who else is doing impressive work. I know there's a lot, right? So if you could name a couple people that we might want to talk to about some of the work they're doing, we'd love to hear from you.
There's a professor at Vanderbilt, Kivian Strassen, who is
Mm-hmm.
doing amazing, he's doing amazing work.
Yep.
Um, Dr. Lawrence Fung in Stanford, the Stanford Center for Neurodiversity, I think is doing amazing work. There are a number of charities that we believe are a real force for good within the community. Chris Banks at the Autism Society of America is, I think, doing amazing work, really, really helping define what good looks like in a lot of the provisions for the community, just to name a few. And you can tell Chris I said that.
Well, it sounds like you just told him yourself if he just needs to listen to our
podcast.
Yeah. So, and before we go, I do want to thank you for such a rich conversation. I think we all learned a lot today. But if someone is out there who says, I happen to be proficient in IT and I'd really like to get my resume in front of you, how do they do that?
www.auticon.us. You will see our program. There are links for applications, and I would also encourage client partners to do the same. So we need both to continue the success. We need the job seeker, and we need the client partner that is willing and ready to take the first step with us and be part of the solution here.
And clearly enjoy other embedded benefits from partnering with you.
Absolutely. And we got survey data. In fact, if you go to the website, our 2022 impact survey has literally a litany of those benefits from surveys with our clients. It's them saying what these programs have been able to do.
That's terrific. And one of our favorite things to do, Jen and I, is to connect people in the community. So you're part of our own little network now, and to the extent that our paths cross with people who are aligned with what you're doing, we will not hesitate to do that. So, David, thank you so much for joining us today. It's just really a pleasure, and we're grateful for the work that you and your team are doing every day.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. Grateful to be a part of the network, and thanks for all the work that you do. It was great to speak with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.